New Orleans Saints rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler is making headlines again already because hold on, let me check my notes. Tried on a helmet. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I'm your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're taking a look at the Saints rookie class because all of one has been signed. I'll let you know who hasn't and why. We're also going to take a look at Derek Carr's comments with NOLA.com, laying out some of what we can expect to see from this offense. It was 3 sentences, but that gives us many hours of material if we want it. And of course, we're going to lead everything off with the newest big focus on rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler, which really doesn't come all the way down to him trying on a helmet, but instead what a veteran defensive leader had to say about him. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much for making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, safety Tyrann Mathieu visited with former NFL quarterback Robert Griffin III, who, by the way, is on a tear on content creation right now. By the way, him and Chase Daniel have been awesome here recently. Definitely worth your time to go and check these guys out. In a much longer tete-a-tete with Tyrann Mathieu, the one thing that I want to pull away from it and discuss a little bit more deeply are Tyrann Mathieu's comments on rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler. We'll also take a look at something that Derek Carr had to say about the selection of Spencer Rattler as well. But it's clear that the new fan favorite here in New Orleans seems to be rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler, who hasn't stepped on the field yet, but there is so much excitement around what he could potentially grow to be. But that excitement doesn't seem to be limited to the fan base. It sounds like that excitement is inside the walls of the facility as well. I spoke with somebody within the New Orleans Saints organization who told me that there is a lot of excitement around Spencer Rattler, and in particular, kind of highlighted that the offensive staff really likes the tool set that a guy like Spencer Rattler brings to the league. Now, that's not late-breaking, monumental stuff to hear from a team that drafted a quarterback. A team that drafted a player likes the tools that player has. No way, Ross. But I do want to kind of highlight that, look, the excitement around this guy is not limited to the fan base. It goes into the walls of the facility as well. And we got another nod towards that thanks to Tyrann Mathieu in his conversation with Robert Griffin III. He said, in case you haven't, just to kind of set everything up here, in the conversation, and what we have seen from Robert Griffin III already is that he has called Spencer Rattler the, quote, quarterback steal of the draft. And in the process of highlighting all of the different things that Spencer Rattler did during his time in Oklahoma, but more specifically the time that he spent in South Carolina, he highlighted Rattler's ability to manage the game pre-snap, make plays under pressure, and of course highlighted his arm talent as well, which I think we see some of those passes down the field come up a little bit short and everything like that. But it's not because the arm strength isn't there. It's because the ball kind of ducks midair or something like that because there's so much air underneath that ball. So these are all things that'll get better at the next level, but you can see the pure building blocks that are available for this quarterback through the eyes of a former rookie, but also just former NFL quarterback in RG3. I'll call him here moving forward, Robert Griffin III. But his conversation with Tyrann Mathieu, he asked a little bit about Spencer Rattler and if he's gotten much exposure to him. And Tyrann Mathieu had some glowing praise for him. Remember, Tyrann Mathieu early on in his playing career started coming out of LSU to the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is the same state where Spencer Rattler played college football. Now, playing high school football. Now, you'll notice, of course, every time that anything is going to come up around Spencer Rattler and his high school football playing days, everything's going to come back to that QB1 Beyond the Lights or whatever Netflix documentary. But I'm going to leave that off to the side. It's been criticized enough. I'm not shocked that a 17-year-old high school quarterback was acting like a 17-year-old high school quarterback, pretends to be shocked. Who'da thunk it? But the bigger thing for me is what he did out on the field. And so Tyrann Mathieu says he was like the Aaron Rodgers of high school football. Now, if you accept the on-field part of Aaron Rodgers, at that time in particular, too, right? Aaron Rodgers has become associated with other stuff since Tyrann Mathieu's playing days in Arizona. But at that time, he was just looked at as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And so I think that the comparison there is fun. And I think that when you think about the things, sorry, let me rephrase that. I believe that when you think about the things, that way I don't say all those think words at the same time, you can kind of see it, right? What was Aaron Rodgers best known for? His creativity with the ball in his hands, his ability to extend plays, the arm strength, all those things. All of that stuff has been a part of Spencer Rattler's brand. Arizona area high school, Oklahoma, South Carolina. Like, those are all things that kind of checks the box. And of course, pre-snap. So we go back to the things that RG3 highlighted about Spencer Rattler: his ability to set things up and diagnose pre-snap, his ability to create, his ability to work under pressure, and his arm talent. Those are all things that we always talked about with Aaron Rodgers, especially during that time while Tyrann Mathieu was in Arizona, before we started to see, age, things like that. But even still today on the field, I mean, Aaron Rodgers can get it done when he can be there. He goes on to say the kid could always spin the rock. Like I said, we all go through challenging stuff. I went through challenging stuff as a youngster as well. Everybody that he said that he talked to around Spencer Rattler has highlighted his growth. And then he also went on to mention that, like, that's the best thing that you could ask of any of these guys, is to get started on the right foot and step forward, right? And that's effectively what you're hoping for when it comes to Spencer Rattler, is that he'll be able to do exactly that. And, just based upon what we've heard from his coaches, his head coach, his offensive coordinator, all those other things out at South Carolina, and the head coach at South Carolina, who was also on the staff at Oklahoma before Spencer Rattler transferred and all that. Like, both of those guys kind of highlighting the same things there. So you get a little bit of that praise for Spencer Rattler, and they're excited to see what it is and how it is that he's going to grow. He went on to say that he's going to get a lot of work with the New Orleans Saints, because they've got defensive practice units 2-3 deep that are going to challenge him, right? That are going to challenge him all throughout. He said he's in a good room, and also mentioned Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a good dude, he said. Takes a lot of punches too, but I think he'll learn from him. I think he will learn from him, especially in his first year. And that's what you want to see from Spencer Rattler, is the idea of growth and what you can get from him, and see where he ends up going. Beyond that, Derek Carr himself also mentioned in his conversation with Zach Ewing over at NOLA.com the idea of the Saints selecting Spencer Rattler. And one of the things that you need for Spencer Rattler, if you want him to develop, is for him to land in a supportive environment, not an environment that looks back at Spencer Rattler as a starting quarterback, not an environment with a starting quarterback that looks back at Spencer Rattler and says, hey, I'm not going to help you. You're on your own. I'm not helping you take my job, or whatever. Instead, Derek Carr at least is saying the right things out loud. I'm 33 years old. Taysom is 33 years old. You have to eventually find someone to groom for the next several years to be that guy. And so that's the way that he looks at the Spencer Rattler selection, which I think means, it sounds like, he'll be settling into that supportive environment that he'll need to be able to maximize his best opportunities here in New Orleans. So we'll see how things go. I'm not going to get super hype about anybody that hasn't hit a football field yet, but it is cool to see the sort of co-signing, the signs of confidence, all these other things around the 5th-round rookie that the New Orleans Saints were able to bring in, that dropped until the Saints were able to select him at 150 overall, which could make him, as RG3 called him, the quarterback steal of the draft. But let's see how it all pans out. Now, we mentioned some Derek Carr quotes here, but one of the other things that Derek Carr mentioned in his conversation with NOLA.com is some details about the New Orleans Saints' new offense. Let's break it down, and I'll give you some ideas of what to expect from that new offense just based on these quotes. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends at Yahoo Finance. Behind every great investor, there is Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great for you to be able to see all of your investment and retirement accounts all in one place? That's got to be one of my favorite things about Yahoo Finance. Look, I'm new to finance. I'm new to investing in particular. But even beyond just the idea of investing, which can feel pretty big, there are some personal investments that I've already made, things like 401ks, life insurance plans, retirement plans, things like that. And sometimes it can be hard when they're all with different companies and under different websites, and I got to go sign into this and open that up in this tab and all this stuff. No longer, because I can securely link all of my brokerage accounts to Yahoo Finance for a unified view of everything that's going on with what I hope to be something I get to leave behind after I'm gone. You know what I mean? And so being able to have something so secure, so simple, so easy that is also allowing me to maximize what I'm doing, that is so meaningful at the same time, it just doesn't get any better. So for a comprehensive financial news and analysis, make sure that you visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one finance destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula to winning championships is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to be able to maintain your vehicle and level it up when it comes to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, whatever it is that you're into, whether it's speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered at ebaymotors.com. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're going to be able to find everything that you're looking for very easily over at eBay Motors. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit the first time, every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to level up your car, bring home that MVP performance, and start to bring home those huge wins as well. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, family. Turns out we were exactly right about what to expect from this new New Orleans Saints offense with Klint Kubiak as the new offensive coordinator and offensive play caller. And all of that gets backed up by some comments that Derek Carr himself made in his conversation with Zach Ewing over at NOLA.com. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On Saints a part of your day and, of course, your first listen of the day. Be sure you go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream as well, the first ever national sports 24/7 stream on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire Channel TV or TV's channels app as well. You can go and find it over there. All right, so I wanted to highlight this conversation around Zach Ewing and Derek Carr, and pull one quote from it, share it with you, and then just kind of give you the ideas that kind of come to mind thinking about this offense. Now, we've talked a lot about what we think this New Orleans Saints new offense is going to be. We did an entire breakdown on what this wide zone offense looks like for the run game, what it looks like for the passing game, several positions, all those other things. We'll continue that series when there's greater interest in it after we got through all the draft stuff, mini camps, all that kind of junk. And so we'll get through all of that, or we'll start getting back into that ahead of training camp. But this is kind of our first foray into it with some actual comments on things that we can expect beyond Klint Kubiak himself and his brief conversation with Aaron Summers, which you can find over at the New Orleans Saints YouTube page. So I just want to highlight this quote right here, particularly towards the end of it. He said that he's obviously excited to play in the system. You see all the quarterbacks that have played in it and see what it can be. We'll come back to that because I think that that is a very important point. But also, you can see that if there's any group that's most excited, it's probably the offensive line. The run game is unbelievable. And then here we go. The play actions, the rollouts, the timing of things. I'm really excited about this offense for that group of guys. So these are all things that Derek Carr said. Okay. So we heard that the offensive line's excited. We heard him talk about the quarterbacks that have played in the system before. We heard him talk about, or we see him here talk about the run game, play actions, rollouts, timing, right? These are all the things that we kind of highlighted before and said, okay, these are the things that you should expect to see from the New Orleans Saints here in 2024. Now, will they be successful? That's the part that we'll have to wait and see. But these are the things that we wanted to see involved in the offense, particularly play action. We saw what happened when the New Orleans Saints started to lean a little bit more into play action in the right sequencing. So the frequency of play action didn't super pick up towards the end of the season last year, but in the better quarterback play and in the better offensive production that we saw from the team, the sequencing of play action made a little bit more sense, especially when it was helped out and aided by a run game, Kendre Miller in week 18, for instance, things like that. So if the offensive line is most excited, then that should tell you a lot, right? Because the offensive line right now, we don't even know who the left guard starter is on the Saints offensive line at the moment. But if beyond that, they're still excited about what's coming, we should examine why. So let's start there. And then we'll come back to the quarterbacks who have played in the system thing that I want to highlight. Because I think there's a little bit of a misconception around what that could potentially mean. So when we think about the run game for the New Orleans Saints, obviously we know that the run game is going to change. This is going to be a big shift for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to that area. Not a lot of running between the tackles, although there will still be some. Again, there will still be man gap run principles. Those will still be there. But for the most part, or not necessarily for the most part, but the big kind of signature of this offense is going to be running around the tackles to the outside, getting players in space. This is great for guys like Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller, who put on a show at the end of the season, which was nice to see. The other thing that you're looking at in the run game is how athletic your offensive line is and what they're asked to do. Here's another quote from Derek Carr. He said, "The philosophy of the scheme really fits the group that we have now." If you listen to yesterday's episode, the Thursday episode, where I went down sort of the list of like, did the New Orleans Saints improve on their roster or did they kind of stay the same? My opinion, and a lot of people disagreed, that's fine. But my opinion is that the roster, talent-wise, kind of stayed the same. Your backup quarterback is different. Your depth at wide receiver maybe improved. Your linebacker room improved. You added Chase Young to your defensive line. If he's out on the field, that improves your defensive line. But outside of that, most everything else kind of remains on the same level. The offensive line is the big question mark because you don't know what's going to happen with Trevor Penning. Taliese Fuanga, as much confidence as we have in him, as excited as he is, and as much as you know that I like him as a draft pick and knew that the New Orleans Saints were going to take him, we still don't know, right? Those are still two relative unknowns there. But the reason why I highlight that is to say that the Saints roster hasn't undergone a ton of change this offseason. They plugged the holes that were created by the attrition, but there wasn't a lot of attrition. A little bit at linebacker, a lot on the offensive line, a little bit at wide receiver. That's fine. A little bit at safety, but with a guy that you barely had on the field anyway in Marcus May. So, with all that said, this takes us back to another thing that I mentioned not too long ago, which was that the offense for last year's roster was trying to recapture an old flame. It was trying to recapture old success. It wasn't built for the talent that they had on the roster. That was what we all kept saying about this New Orleans Saints offense early on last season, was that the team is too talented to be as poor as they were on offense. That was such a big thing, right? Or as inefficient, unproductive, however it is that you want to look at it. I thought it was a poor performance on offense early on in the season. So now you're looking at an offense that everybody is starting to feel like, okay, maybe this matches what they actually have on the roster. So this backs up what we were talking about yesterday too, that the idea of 2023 was the coaching staff wasn't, the Saints are basically saying the coaching staff wasn't the problem, the roster was. And then now in 2024, they're going, well, the roster wasn't the problem, the coaching staff was. And so now we're going to see if that's true going into 2024. And it sounds like, to an extent, Derek Carr maybe sees that too. This scheme fits the group we have now, quote unquote. The other thing that I'll mention here is the play actions. We mentioned that, the rollouts. So the reason why rollouts are important is because typically rollouts are accompanied with outside zone stretch or outside run play action, right? Because you're moving as the quarterback to the play side, trying to hand the ball off or faking the handoff. And then as you come from that, you flip over your backside shoulder and then roll to the opposite direction. That's typically the way that a rollout will work. And so because you're running so much of the outside zone runs, it really opens up your opportunity to be able to utilize things like that, move the pocket, stuff like that. Things that we talked about how the Saints should be doing all throughout the 2023 season. Hopefully we'll see in 2024. And then the timing of things is his last quote. And I think that the timing of things is important. It's really important for the offensive line, understanding how to move around one another, utilizing that athleticism, all those other things, pulling guard, pulling tackles, pulling centers, all this stuff. The zone, read steps, the swapping of offensive linemen, crossing one another, all those other things. Timing becomes really important there. But I also think timing becomes really important for the quarterback as well. And so when I highlight the timing of the quarterback, the thing that I highlight is getting the ball out quickly and getting the ball into the hands of the playmakers. So I would expect to see that in this offense. In this quote from Derek Carr kind of maybe references it, although I think he might have really been thinking about the timing for the offensive line more than anything else. But I do think that like the timing of routes, the timing of concept, the timing of reads, all those other things becomes a part of that conversation as well. I really enjoyed the quote here where he said, you see all the quarterbacks who have played in it and see what it can be. And I think that there's a little bit of a misconception that a wide zone offense has to have a mobile quarterback. And when I talk about a mobile quarterback, I mean a quarterback that can sprint 60 yards for you, right? I don't think that that's necessarily true. Jimmy Garoppolo took a team to a Super Bowl in a wide zone offense. Matthew Stafford went from the Detroit Lions to the Los Angeles Rams, took a team to the Super Bowl with a wide zone offense. Brock Purdy can run, is mobile, but would I call him a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. And look at what he's been able to do in that offense. You look at, now Kirk Cousins, who was in this very same offense in 2021, had a great year. Interception numbers down, touchdown numbers up, all those other things. Not the highest or best of his career, but amongst, and certainly well above the worst of his career. So we know Kirk Cousins is not that type of quarterback. Can he extend a play? Sure. Derek Carr, same thing. Can he extend a play? Yes. Is he a mobile quarterback like those other guys that I named earlier? No. And so I think that you can see several examples of non-mobile quarterbacks, non-dual threat quarterbacks, more pocket passer types excelling in this system. And I think that is what Derek Carr is referring to. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. Now let's see if he can add to the success rate of it. Just because the other quarterback succeeded in it doesn't mean that he will. So let's see what happens when he gets there. But I have a lot of faith in this system. I believe in the system. Now let's see if the players can execute it. Coming up next, the players that will be executing some of these systems on the field are you got the rookies that are all coming in. And it seems that the Saints have signed all but one rookie. And you should not be surprised and you should not be panicked about who that rookie is or how long it will take to get that contract done. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need to get an opportunity to get something off of our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important that you let that out, especially to somebody that's an unbiased party in your life. So today, I want to say something, and I think that you might be thinking the same thing this week. Everybody expected that the NFL schedule was going to be released on May 9th. Jim Irsay sends out a tweet. Now, all of a sudden, it's not going to be released until next week, May 15th. Let's stop playing. Just release a schedule. We don't need a 3-hour special to see what the schedule is going to be. It's all going to leak before you go on air anyway. Let's just get over it. We don't need this. It's okay. Now, you might be obviously dealing with things much bigger than a schedule release, and that's exactly what therapy is for, because therapy can look different for everyone. So no matter what it is, big or small, it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So you've been thinking about trying therapy, try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints have signed the majority of their rookie draft class, except for one prospect, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback out of Alabama. But I'm going to let you know why you should not be concerned about this at all. Appreciate you very much. As always, make a Locked On Saints a part of your day and a part of your routine. Don't forget, we are your team every day. We'll be back here on Monday with a brand new episode for you, taking a look at where the New Orleans Saints are coming out of mini camps. And honestly, you'll probably get a bonus episode this week as well, because I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we're going to be out at mini camps tomorrow. So we'll be there getting a little bit of a look at everything going on, I'm sure we'll get to talk to coaches, all that kind of stuff, maybe hear from coordinators. So lots of good stuff coming your way this weekend and into Monday as well. So let's start off here with wrapping up today's show, looking at the Saints having signed their rookie class. So everybody, Taliese Fuanga, Spencer Rattler, Jalen Ford, Bub Means, Christian Boyd, and Josiah Aziram, all 6 of their 7 draft class members have been signed to their rookie contracts. This is not surprising. Rookie minicamp kicked off this week. There will be some new names that you're going to see as well. Undrafted free agent rookies will probably sign their contracts today after physicals and all that stuff are done and all that stuff kind of clears and comes through. The one player that has not signed a contract from the rookie draft class thus far is Kool-Aid McKinstry. Now, I want to remind you that we've seen this before, and don't be surprised if this goes all the way in to training camp, because it might go beyond mini camps. So you got rookie mini camps this week. You have minicamps, veteran minicamps in early June, maybe late May. And then so from, late May and then early June, you've got OTAs. It might not get settled during that time, in which case Kool-Aid McKinstry wouldn't then be back in the building until the team is in Orange County for training camp. So it might take until training camp before that contract gets officially signed. Why is that the case? So I want to remind you that we've seen this twice already. Isaiah Foskey, we saw it with Alontae Taylor the year before that as well. This is the new norm, okay? Second round contracts, rookie contracts are tough because more and more guarantees are getting involved in those contracts. And a lot of the guarantees are based on what is signed before and what precedent is set. So until Keon Coleman at 33 signs his contract, there won't be a precedent for the next player at 34 and the next player at 35 and the next player at 36 and so on and so forth. There's things like offsetting language, which just kind of protects you for injury, things like that. Remember, Kool-Aid McKinstry does have the right foot injury, which is not expected to be major, is not expected to keep him off the field for training camp, is supposed to keep him off the field during the spring here, minicamps, OTAs, NBD. Not worried about that. But these are things that all factor in to how quickly or not quickly the Kool-Aid McKinstry contract gets done. So if this goes into training camp, do not be concerned. There is no world in which the player doesn't sign the contract and then says, well, I'm not playing. Because then their career is over. They can't just go somewhere. They were drafted by the team. They can't just say, I'm not signing the contract. That doesn't exist. There's no way to do that. They would then have to just stop playing football until all 4 of those years ran out, basically. That's not entirely true, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's not a real situation here to where Kool-Aid McKinstry doesn't sign his contract and therefore is not a New Orleans Saint. Just like there wasn't a real opportunity for that to happen with Alontae Taylor, just like there wasn't a real opportunity for that to happen with Isaiah Foskey. And the reasons all come down to just making sure that the contract is of market value, basically, is what you're looking at. Kool-Aid McKinstry was drafted 41st overall. If he signs his contract and accepts a certain number of guaranteed money before the player at 43 signs their contract and accepts more guaranteed money, or signs the contract at 41 and accepts less guaranteed money than scalably they would have been able to get based upon signing or waiting to sign until after pick 40 or pick 39 sign their contract, then he's out of luck. Like, that would stink. And no representative is going to do that. And so when you get towards the 5th round pick, 6th round pick, 7th round picks, there's either no guaranteed money or very little guaranteed money. But in the 2nd round, there's typically a moving scale of guaranteed money that's kind of based on who was drafted before you. And that ends up being a big part of it. And then, like I mentioned, the offsetting language and stuff like that, that protects you with injuries and all those other things. All of that stuff ends up coming into play as well. So I would not be worried about this. And I know that some people are going to be worried. I know that I'm going to hear from folks and things like that. That's totally fine. If you get worried about it, reach out. I'll explain it even more in depth and everything like that. But this is not something that you have to be super concerned about. In fact, just expect it. Because here's the other reality. Because he has that foot injury, you might just take the guarantees as they're given. Who knows? You know what I mean? It might actually happen a lot more quickly because of the fact that he's coming in with that, I'll call it ailment more than anything else. I mean, the guy was still able to perform in his pro day. He was still able to run in the 4.4s or whatever in his pro day. Like, clearly not too concerned about all this. But that might end up having an impact. So what I would do right now is just expect that it will take a while for the contract to get done. And then if it doesn't, happy surprise. If it does, you were ready. You were absolutely ready. And tell your friends. Don't be worried. It's going to be okay. The other player that I want to highlight too here real quick before we wrap up is Taliese Fuanga. He signs the 4-year deal, which is typical of a 1st round pick. And then I was asked, when do we know how much the 5th year option will be? And we won't really have an understanding of that until basically 2026. So the 2024, 2025, 2026 seasons will happen. Then the Saints will have the option at that point after the 3rd year to pick up the 5th year option ahead of the final year, right? and then they'll have until May 2nd, May whatever, to make that decision. Because that 5th-year option is based on averages and things like that of top contracts signed and all those other things at the same position, we're not going to know what the 5th-year option really looks like until the 2026 offseason. So don't be worried about that just yet. The Saints will have the opportunity to pick up that 5th-year option, assuming all goes well for the first 3 years, health, all those other things. But if he's there, then yes, there's the real opportunity. They would have the opportunity to pick up the 5th-year option. We just don't know what that amount will be until we see what kind of the top guard contracts. I can't remember what the range is, but there's like a certain percentage or average of the top X amount of contracts. And then did you make a Pro Bowl? Did you make All Pro? Like those types of things as well. And then where were you drafted and all these other bits. And so there's a whole bunch that kind of goes into it. But I wouldn't be too worried about it just yet, because we're not really going to know until we see what the positional spending is across the NFL in the off season when it's eligible that they pick up that 5th-year option, which won't be until 2026. So that's what we're looking at there. All right, we appreciate you very much. As always, y'all making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Pelicans. Jake Madison put out a banger of an episode about Willie Green today on Friday, so make sure you go and check that out to wrap up your week as your second listen. We appreciate you very much. As always, make a Locked On Saints a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.